Welcome to Old World Exploration. In this video we're going to be taking a look at Dubuque, Iowa. The oldest city in Dubuque, we are told, founded in 1833, incorporated in 1857, so founded 1833. What did they find in 1833? Named after Julian Dubuque, a Canadian apparently, who came down in the 1700s to the region, apparently the first man of European origin to enter the region that we now call the state of Iowa. Interesting story. We have an artist's rendition of the gentleman, and we also have what is supposedly a recreation from a photograph of a skull of what he apparently had looked. Dubuque, a small city, modern day population 60,000 people, turn of the 20th century 36,000 people, and really not much more as you go back in time, as you can see here. So we're going to take a closer look at many of the old world structures that once existed in Dubuque. Thanks for being here. So the city of Dubuque, on the border between Iowa and Illinois on the Mississippi River. And we can see as we zoom in, about equidistant from Des Moines and Chicago, and both of which are spectacular old world cities. Here we have an 1889 bird's eye view of the old city of Dubuque, apparently at that time. And Wikipedia telling us just under 30,000 people would have been living here at the time. You can see how heavily built out it looks even in this bird's eye view. This little tower structure is the monument to Julian Dubuque. It sits on the hillside just south of the city. We are told that that was constructed in the 1890s after there having been a wooden monument for a very long period of time. But this whole structure, known as the Mines of Spain region, starts to feel really melty to me. Post-cataclysm melty. But let's look at some of the structures in Dubuque. Many of them, of course, no longer standing. Here's an old train station. And we have that familiar look of the tower with the mini, the 4 points around the corners, and then the peak. You see that in a lot of churches, city halls, courthouses, things like that. This is apparently the bell tower that had already been removed from a previous structure. Now sitting on this is a strange tale as well. We saw it in the intro. They've placed this now in the middle of a road in Dubuque, it looks like. Carnegie, of course, getting his greasy paws into the action, in on the action in Dubuque. And if you're wondering why I'm calling down Andrew Carnegie, I like to take shots at the robber barons here on this channel. I believe that they were basically inheritors of an old world civilization. They're actually just faces and names put up before us, I think, to explain the rapid industrial development that they're telling us went on at that early time period. But what I think it was so much of this was found dead, and they had to put it all back into operation. So what we're looking at is an artificial timeline of history. And you see an exponential growth in population in so many of these places. And when we look at Dubuque, you can see here the exponential growth occurring in this early time period, pre-Civil War, it looks like, and right in through and past the Civil War into the early 1900s. And many of these historical anchors, such as the American Civil War, appearing to be potentially a cleanup operation and a resetting of the narrative here, especially on the continent of North America. Here we have an orphan's home, no shortage of orphans at that period of time. Looking like there's a heavy Catholic influence in Dubuque. Now, if any of you are from the area or know anything about the area, of course, I always welcome your contribution in the comments section. It always adds a nice flavor to the story. And many of what I was able to dig up are postcards. So they're not the best resolution. I do apologize for that. But they can't always be crisp and clean when we're digging into the past. There's always a bit of a haze. and so much of it is speculation. That's what we do here on this channel. We speculate. We wonder about the basement windows and the stone foundations and the multi-storied structures and the towers. We wonder about the need for it, and of course the resources and being able to build all these things in that short period of time. And a part of the time we live in, we are witnessing a renouncing of the colonial narrative, the historical narrative. I think we can incorporate that into this research, this field of research as well, when we recognize that colonialism and the outstretched paws of the Vatican and the Crown and all of the resources behind those institutions have deceived us about the past, about who and what we are, what we're doing here. And they've had us fall for a deception, I think. So what we're doing on this channel is we're exploring other options. This is supposedly a casino. Again, apologize for the poor resolution. But it just gives you a sense of the style of building that was commonplace at the time. And you may be wondering what I'm talking about. Well, I believe we are living in a post-cataclysm realm. I don't know how the cataclysm occurred or when it occurred or what exactly happened. And I think the effects of it take shape in different forms across the realm. But I think there is a force, an entity or entities that have been able to manipulate and control what goes on here after this cataclysm occurred, and they're able to reset a lot of the civilization that was devastated before that. These are interesting, looking like stone structures, looking like they have been exposed to very high heat. You can see the way that they get sort of crispy and drippy on the outside here. It is difficult to wrap your head around what may have happened here. Because we have no scaffolding for it, and that's intentional. I think so many of the disciplines require you to stay within a box in order to keep your profession, to keep your job, whatever it may be, your ability to research. You have to keep your way of thinking within a box. So there are those of us, the outliers, that aren't invested in that. Or in any sort of way, are doing our best to point to these inaccuracies and inconsistencies that are quite visible when we look at, for instance, a church like this in Dubuque, Iowa, St. Luke's Methodist Episcopal Church, really looking like a castle. You could see the stonework. We're raising more questions than answers, that's for sure. That's for sure. We have one of two breweries that we're going to see. You have a nice cone on the corner and stacks. A lot of red brick. A lot of people have questioned where were they getting all the red brick. And it's not just the red brick, folks. It's the way that the interiors were finished. It's the way that the tin was tinkered together. Is tinker the right word? I'm not sure. To make all the flashings on the roofs and the tech up top. There's a lot that goes into the construction of a building, and even in our modern day, these things take a lot of time. So we're looking into the past, and we're seeing very short building times for many of these structures, but we're also seeing very elaborate and ornate structures which are inconsistent with what we know about the time period, population size, the technology available to them, and so on. You can see again here, what would it take to construct a stone wall like this? What type of manpower and resources? We are told they did not have power at the time, so we're talking about horses and donkeys, and oxen maybe, and rail, of course. And these are the technologies that we are told are at their disposal at this time. So many of these structures look like they're just sort of in the middle of a field, like it's a post-flood phenomenon. The waters have receded. There's a layer of mud, and And what's left is some of the buildings that survived. There was a systematic digging out from underneath the mud to reset these populations, or reset these locations with new populations. There you have the orphans. Yeah. And the World's Fairs, if you've looked into the World's Fairs at all, this is the main brewery in Dubuque. Quite ridiculous, looking like a castle. The Dubuque Brewing and Malting Company. If you look into the World's Fairs, that's a great entry point if you're new to this field of research. Some people are calling it the Tartarian field of research. I have used the word, but I don't think it's all encompassing. Tartaria appears to be a region, or the remains of a region in the Russian area. I think what we're looking at is a worldwide civilization with nuances and differences from region to region, but there is definitely a unified technology and a system that all seems to be cohesive. And what we're doing is we're peeking into the remains and trying to understand what we are, what was here, who it was. So many questions. And when I show you all these postcards and photographs, I'm not saying that they were all built by the previous civilization. I'm saying we're looking at the remains of a previous civilization. For instance, a structure like this very well could have been scaled down. Maybe there was damage, roof's been rebuilt, some walls patched up, windows patched over, things like that. But it's basically a skeleton of the old world, and many of them were still intact, I suggest. And this is not my first city I've looked at. I have looked into hundreds of cities, and they are available on my channel. I do like to investigate by region or city for the most part, so if you're looking for a specific location, I may have already made a video on that. So make sure you search through my site to see if I've already done the city that you're hoping to see. If not, you can put that city in the recommendation as a recommendation in the comment section. I'd be happy to dig into it. I enjoy doing the research. We have an Elks building. And not a great photograph, but again, if we look close, you can see how ornately decorated the upper reaches of this house or structure is. And again, low population, comparatively speaking, to modern days, which would imply that there would have to be more of a there should be more of a minimalist approach to the architecture based on the lack of resources and manpower. This is a high school that only exists in this format that I could find. I could not find a photograph or anything like it, and I think I know why, because it really makes no sense to have a high school built like a castle in Dubuque, Iowa in the 1800s. And notice all the churches too, right? We have St. Anthony's now. And so what I think is very early on, the forces within especially the Catholic Church in the Western world, but in other religions respectively, had or do still contain a lot of the hidden knowledge about this realm, and they were able to reset it in such a manner with that knowledge. And if that's not the case, go ahead and open up the Vatican libraries and the vaults and let the people decide for themselves whether we are being told the truth about history, or that there's much more to the story that is being kept from us and used to keep us under the thumb of these power entities, let's say. This is still that St. Mary's Church. The old City Hall, apparently built in the 1850s, less than 10,000 people. They built a magnificent City Hall. Here we have it in the modern day. You can see the lower parts again having that, again, that crispy, bulgy, flat looking stone. Bulgy on the outside surface, but flat in every other way. Very good indication that we're looking at something from the old world. We have a rail station, another one, yet another one. The courthouse, which you saw in the intro, built in the Beaux-Arts style in 1891 to 1893. We've got a 2-year build time on this puppy in the 1890s. And it's not just the size of the building, but it's the elaborate ornamentation which casts the seed of doubt to my eye as a carpenter, as someone who's done a lot of finished work, and as just a rational human being. It doesn't make sense according to the technologies they had at the time, population, the resources available. A lot of these places, and I couldn't get any photos of the interior of this, but a lot of these places are adorned with marbles and granites, and these are polished marbles and granites and hardwoods, and elaborate ornamentation in the form of moldings. They're spectacular, like nothing we build in the modern day. So this is why the questions are being asked. And that does ruffle people's feathers. A lot of people don't like having that firm, cemented foundation of history that they have in their mind. They don't like that being shaken up. But I have news for you folks. If it's not shaking yet, it will be, because there's too many holes in this narrative. This is the hospital for the insane. Just another insane asylum in an insane narrative. So orphans' homes and insane asylums, and ticking all the boxes again. We have high schools like castles. We have, of course, the electric trams or streetcars or rail cars, whatever you want to call them, an integral part of Dubuque, a mode of transportation from the old world, I would suggest. And there's that tunnel that we saw in the intro as well, very interesting shape there. And as much as I did dig into Dubuque, I have a sneaking suspicion that I missed quite a bit. So again, if you know anything more about the area, let me know what I missed. It's always interesting to see what doesn't come up in a search. And there's a lot more about our past we need to understand, having to do with so much of what we're seeing, so much of this. As we come out of the fog, the sun begins to shine a bit brighter. And the architecture is a great way to unlock that curiosity. And I certainly encourage you all watching this, to explore the old world. So this would be the Mines of Spain region I was talking about. You can get some very interesting geological formations. Again, if you have watched my channel for a while, then there are many other channels out there that cover this, that get into the post-cataclysm effects of the realm. And what we're looking at, it possibly is not necessarily geology from millions of years, which is part of that Royal Society colonial narrative, but rather we are living in a post-cataclysm world. And what we're looking at is the charred after effects of architecture and infrastructure. And I think there again is mounting evidence to suggest that that is much more likely the case than the conventional historical narrative we have been fed. This is the Hotel Julian, named after the great Julian Dubuque. Caught fire, we are told. Looks like it was destroyed. Quite an amazing hotel, as you can see, at a very early time period. Caught fire in 1913. It looks like this would be the firemen of the time. And you always have the men with the hats. Men in hats. That's the story for so many of these old photographs. This is the old shot tower. We're told that this was for making lead shot. They would drop it down from the top, and at the bottom, shot would be created. I don't know. It's the old jail, 1850s, built in the Egyptian Revival style, we're told. Yeah, I suppose the Egyptian Revival is pretty popular in Dubuque. Again, some examples, visual examples for you of those horizontal lines and interesting geology. And so what do you think about Dubuque? Are we ticking the boxes here, or is my research way off? Is everything on the up and up? It's possible. I'm speculating. It's all speculation, right? The Trappist monks. Or is there a grand deception going on? And I suspect this has been decapitated. There's the interior of that. And all the young folks being indoctrinated. The Orpheum Theater. Take a look at some of the detail. Beautiful mansard style roof. Very ornate. And of course the interior does not disappoint either. So definitely the performing arts a large part of the old world, and I suspect music, of course, as part of that. Very important. Much of what has been handed down to us, I think, with classical composers and some of the silly narratives that go along with, the Mozarts and Beethoven was deaf. I think what we're looking at is a collection of music from the old world that, again, we are giving these placeholders. Let's call Mozart and Beethoven the robber barons of the music of the old world. See if that ruffles any feathers out there. St. Raphael Church. No shortage of churches. There's the shot tower again. This way you get to see what is possibly was red brick at one point in time. I can't really explain the difference, or that we're looking at an addition there or what, but I'm not necessarily sure that we're looking at stone, but I think is actually brick that has been subjected to some sort of heat. What do you think? Have you done any research into that? Let me know. Oh, that's the home for the aged again, or aged, depends how you say it. Not sure what that means. Is that for people that know too much about the past? Stick them in a... Well, we still do that, don't we? We still do that in the modern day. I think that would be the old clock tower. I'm not sure. It's kind of hazy. There's your streetcar. Looking very old world. But there's some of the stuff is difficult to search for in Dubuque. Some of the feeling hidden, a lot of it. So part of it is fuels my speculation, the way I search some of this stuff. And the Hotel Julian, Dubuque. Ending on the Wartburg Seminary College. So this is the end of the file on Dubuque. Remember, a city of less than 100,000 people, far less than 100,000 people. No shortage of old world architecture. Thanks for joining me.